Hi everybody, so this isn't exactly a regular episode of Esoterica. Clearly I'm wearing my Camp Crystal Lake counselor shirt from the summer of 1980, but I had the great privilege and fun to hang out with Andy from Aton Films and Carl from InRange. If you're into firearms YouTube, you should check out his channel on my recent visit to New Orleans to visit with my brother and my family down there. By the way, you can basically thank my brother Jonathan for Esoterica because it was really him that convinced me to start the channel in the first place, so thanks, Jonathan. But New Orleans is it's just a magical place for lots of reasons, and Andy and I had worked together on a few topics, mostly on demonology and witchcraft because we're normal people. So I pitched him on us putting together like a short film on Aleister Crowley and the old Absinthe house based on a 1918 essay penned by Crowley entitled The Green Goddess that he wrote drinking absinthe in the old Absinthe house. And it's a really wonderful essay, and it really showcases Crowley as a writer and a poet. I'll put a link to the essay in the description if you want to read it because of course you do. It's really good. Well, Andy and I co-wrote the script, and he shot and edited a really amazing episode over on his channel featuring the two of us diving deep into Crowley and Absinthe and the world of New Orleans around the time that The Green Goddess was written over there in the old Absinthe house at the corner of Bourbon and Bienville. Of course, we also had a ton of fun up all hours of the night at the old Absinthe house and over at Pirates Alley, both great places to get a glass of absinthe if you're there in New Orleans. I'd also like to extend a very special thank you to Julie over at the old Absinthe house for going out of her way to show us around this historic centerpiece of the French Quarter. Julie, thank you. You really made our night. I've never gotten to see the old Absinthe house in that kind of detail. Folks, go have a glass of absinthe with Julie. However, this episode is actually a bit of a free-form conversation between Andy and I on all things New Orleans and absinthe and, of course, the great beast 666, your uncle and mine, Aleister Crowley. So check out Andy's amazing episode over at his channel, and then maybe come back here, pause this one maybe, then come back here and enjoy our absinthe-inspired conversation in this episode. But until next time, thank you again always for watching Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, religion, and getting drunk in the French Quarter. All right. Andy, welcome to Esoterica, or rather, welcome to Aton Films.
Yeah, welcome to my weird bohemian, creepy little hideaway, my cave here.
It was great getting the tour earlier and seeing the Witchfinder General, and it's amazing.
It took you to my costume closet. We saw the Witchfinder General. We saw Johnny Reb. We saw Klaus as well. We can't leave him out, but he was there.
Little nervous seeing that one.
No, I mean, I get it. Yeah, I get it.
That was great, but it's fantastic just like being in New Orleans and hanging out and talking Crowley and drinking some absinthe. I mean, as someone who, for me, Crowley and absinthe are just sort of, they're part of my daily life for whatever reason. But for someone maybe not part of your daily life, what do you think of what did you think of this essay? I mean, I sort of pitched the idea to you on a lark, and I've really always loved this essay. I think it really captures something well, and Crowley's a great writer. But what were your impressions reading it for the first time?
Yeah, well, it was. I really enjoyed kind of getting to know Crowley a little bit more. My kind of. I feel like what's when we decided to make a video together, I was kind of, I sort of realized kind of my limitations in this regard, that I don't, know a whole lot about sort of Crowley and his particular kind of brand of occultism, except, in which just like as a layperson, just being kind of casually interested in this stuff. And one of the things that I love about your work and your channel is that I'm sort of, not necessarily an expert about a lot of things that you talk about, but that I just like it as a nerd, and that I just have like a layperson's interest in it, and I just really enjoy those topics. I really got to enjoy learning more about him, and also, but I think kind of what I sort of brought to it was sort of the New Orleans side of things, was just sort of the historical context of New Orleans at the time, and also just extensive experience having worked in the French Quarter for many years, and just sort of being in that world, being a Puerto Rican, as we say, Puerto Rican or quarter rat, or the preferred nomenclature, but basically being a total degenerate for a lot of my 20s, hanging out in the French Quarter, which very much lent a lot of personal experience to, it's very easy to visualize his essay when you have that kind of background. So I really enjoyed learning about it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I take away from the essay, which again, if folks, you've not read it, it's available online. It's really worth reading, especially if you're a Crowley fan. I don't know. I always get the feeling, and I grew up not far from here in Mississippi, and so I spent a lot of time in the Quarter as well. But there was something I've always felt that, say what you want to about Crowley, he had his own personal issues or whatever, but I think he got it. I think that the essay captured something of the magic, and of course, who better to capture the magic than
yeah, exactly.
Aleister Crowley. But do you think he gets it? Do you think the essay?
Yeah. Well, that was I mean, that was one of my first thoughts, was that wow, he gets it, and it surprised me how little time he had actually spent in New Orleans, as well. But I think it's like one of those things where it's like the line from The Dark Knight, where it's like, it's the kind of mind the Joker attracts. I think the French Quarter tends to attract weirdos in the best way possible, speaking as a weirdo. I think his personality meshed with the Quarter very well, and I think he did get it. I mean, I think I think as far as New Orleans authors, I mean, I think John Kennedy O'Toole, that's his name, right? Confederacy Dunce's guy, and Anne Rice are really the sort of like quintessential New Orleans authors for me. It's just, you read Confederacy of Dunces, you read Interview with a Vampire, and there's just certain little turns of phrase, certain little descriptions of places, and where you're just like, this person knows, and I got that sense from Crowley. I was surprised that he got that to get that sense from Crowley, because at the end of the day, he did not spend that much time here, and. But yeah, there was a certain, as an observer, which he really spends so much of that essay just observing people and observing the little ecosystem of the old Absinthe house. He really captured something which we talked about in the video on my channel, which if you haven't watched already, you probably should, because it's sort of, this is kind of the postscript of that, the inside the episode, as it were. He really kind of very honestly captured a moment in time in a way that that speaks to his talent as a writer. Really, I mean, the dude has a serious way with words. My particular favorite piece of Crowley writing, of course, being the book of poetry White Stains, but which is full of amazing poetry about all sorts of disgusting, perverted sex acts, hence the title.
Yeah, no, he was an excellent pervert.
Yeah, he was. I'll drink to that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Crowley's a lot of things. He was never halfway anything. So when he did something, he did it.
So what was your? I mean, you've known about this essay for a long time, just in your area of expertise, Western occultism, and obviously Crowley is a big figure in that, and just kind of foundational, right, to like modern occultism, and I mean, you still have OTO running around, and all these groups that are very inspired by Crowley. He's a seminal figure. And you've mentioned the essay "The Green Goddess" before in like prior videos and stuff like that. So how, I guess, does it fit into, in sort of like the, I guess, literary tradition kind of like how does it, what does it mean to you in terms of the literary tradition, in terms of like the picture that he's painting, in terms of the mythology that he's referencing, the mystery of the rainbow and all this type of stuff? Like, could you break down some of that for?
Yeah, there's really the two things that Crowley does. I mean, Crowley's never going to get too far away from sort of the Western occult tradition, and two of the things he really weaves, I think, really pretty majestically through this essay. And it's a short essay. It's it's not long at all. I think in the original 1918 publication, it's only 4 or 5 pages. But one of the things he really focuses on in a really great way is the alchemy of absinthe, and thinking of this as sort of the last gasp of the alchemist, creating this beverage which contains all these herbs that are, absolutely storied in the history of both, the European herbal tradition, but also of the occult tradition. And so you get, wormwood is like, folks, it's biblical, right? Falls out of the sky and turns all the water to blood. Yes. And so you get all of these heavily charged, very mystically inclined herbs. They're all packed into absinthe, and he kind of paints it as the last bastion of the alchemist trade. Yeah. And as a person who's spent some time in front of a still making absinthe, it does give you those vibes, and you do get the sense. And again, folks are seeing, there's all the ritual involved with it. Yeah. There's just no better trifecta than absinthe, the French Quarter, and Aleister Crowley. It's just like a parody of itself. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And so I've known about this essay because it's just like the intersection of all the things that I'm academically interested in. Yeah. And it writes itself. What's surprising to me about this, and I mentioned to you, is that from my knowledge, no one's ever touched this. This is so weird that this is like this could be if the old Absinthe House, really wanted to do it, it really could be a documentary commercial for the Absinthe House. Yeah. So I think what Crowley really does well in terms of the occultism stuff is he really brings in history of alchemy, history of herbology, of the herbology, and of course that's right up there with witchcraft and So I think all those elements he weaves in really well, and I really love the image of absinthe as the last gasp of the alchemist.
Yeah. Well, it's got sort of that, precisely the the herbology and stuff. It has that sort of that sort of feminine, massive air quotes sort of idea of like the witch's cauldron and sort of making the thing and making the potion, and where it's in terms of like there's a mythological kind of connection there to witchcraft and to sort of feminine magic in particular. Aleister Crowley, of course, being a power bottom, was very much in touch with his feminine side, and just sort of the like. And also art, and also just sort of the like wine. That's honestly probably my favorite part of the essay is like wine as like the excess of human will, past necessity needs an outlet. It needs vices, and he sort of like binds wine and vice and art and religion all kind of in the same sort of territory of like, okay, we have you have food, shelter, and water. What else is left in the human condition? And it's sort of the excess, and
the one person he thinks of as the most degenerate is the
prohibitionist.
I love this.
The most immoral.
The most immoral person. He's just this great screed against the prohibitionists. Mm-hmm. But I think he's right. I think it's Churchill or one of those smart people who said something like, you can't trust a person with no vices.
Exactly.
And of course, Crowley knew something about vices. And I do love the idea that the excess has to be, and this is an idea that comes out of George Bataille as well, that the excess is something we have to manage, and we manage it by sort of luxurious consumption.
Precisely.
And I think absinthe is.
Should we have a Marxist take on that, Justin?
Absolutely.
What's our materialist analysis?
Like my absinthe bread. But I love that the idea of like vice is vice can be sacred. Cultivating vice, and absinthe is, I think it's amazing because it is of course absolutely intoxicating, but I love the fact that it has all this ritual associated with it, and you get all the kind of even the preparation of absinthe and the drinking of absinthe has a kind of religious like quality.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And that intersection is just really...
Yeah, no, exactly. It does feel like a bit of a sacrament, and just the ritual of, you know, you get there's a spoon, and then you can hit the sugar, and then you drip really carefully. And even though we were sort of making our first glasses of absinthe today, when I brought you here to my creepy bohemian set with Jefferson Davis's tomb, you know, we were sort of like, you don't have to drip it, you know, and it's like pour the water right in. But it's sort of, there's something about kind of the, you know, it's like the, you know, yeah, you could just eat the cracker, but the guy in the robe has to do the thing. And it's, you know, there's sort of the ritual. It does have a very, it does in a kind of like book report English class kind of way, you know what I mean? In a thematic way. It does sort of smack of religion, and I do love that idea of sort of vice and ritual and religion all sort of being intertwined. That's so on point. And you know, and it's sort. I mean, you know, I'm a big fan of like vampire fiction, you know, and that's sort of a big part of that as well. Is like, which is also very much, you know, I mean, Dracula being written at the height of absinthe time, you know, of the absinthe era. You know, it's sort of which, you know, Francis Ford Coppola, you know, referenced in his adaptation. But yeah, it's sort of a similar thing of like, you know, of the life-giving liquid and of the sort of the ritual and religious sort of aspects of essentially what is sort of a pretty kind of horny, dirty, you know, a vice-ridden thing, you know, and yeah, and that's so sort of bound up. Yeah, just again thematically, and just like the process of the artist and the idea of the starving artist, and kind of going back to the French Quarter thing, you know, just having known and sort of been myself, you know, just like an artist who like had a day job and was like kind of a hot mess of a person, and you know, and sort of didn't make any money at it, but like was like trying and stuff. And we've all, I think anybody who's like, I guess the sort of trendy modern term is a creative, but I think everybody, all the creative people out there can relate to that. Mm-hmm. And you know, you see it in New Orleans, as you mentioned in my video, in the jazz musicians, right, you know, who were all just hot messes of people, and yet they're these legends, they're these American icons. But at the time, you know, I mean, a lot of them became famous posthumously, or you know, their monumental artistic achievement to just like, I mean, it goes beyond music, jazz. It goes to, I mean, you know, jazz has artistic influence in film. It has artistic influence in visual art. It has artistic influence in so many different media of art. And a lot of these people were just these half-mad alcoholics who, you know, died young and never made much money their entire lives. And that's, again, that the bohemia of, right, and the associations with absinthe are very strong.
No, of course, and Crowley fits very well into, you know, of course, you know, he's a bit of a high Tory, but he really, you know, despite that, I mean, he's also kind of a, you know, degenerate of a kind, a you know, degenerate genius.
Yeah.
And, you know,
which we mean in the best way possible.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I mean, it's absolutely a compliment. But, you know, and again, there's something about this essay that I really love, because not only does it capture, you know, this really great unholy trifecta of, you know, the French Quarter and Absinthe and Crowley, but also the time, like 1918, those few years right around World War I, with Storyville and with Prohibition coming and all that. It's just a incredibly pregnant time period. I make it easy to imagine a short film of you know, the sort of, you know, painting kind of vignettes of that world, you know, from Crowley's point of view, from the point of view of the old Absinthe House. Yeah, I really feel like this essay, I don't know why it is exactly this essay isn't better known. Absinthe people know it. Crowley people sometimes know it.
New Orleans people rarely know it. I mean,
and that's what I was going to ask you. How this is I think it captures something really, really amazing that could be part of a, you know, a New Orleans anthology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so too. I mean, it definitely. Yeah, I mean, I in fact. Just the other day, you know, I was at Pirates Alley drinking Nouvelle Orleans, doing research for this video, which I will write off on my taxes. Thank you very much. Absinthe for research, and just sort of messaging with a friend of mine. Her husband is a tour guide and was giving a tour, talking about the propaganda campaign against absinthe back before, you know, Prohibition, And I sent her a message and basically just said, "Oh, it's your husband's talking about this, and I happen to be doing research for this video. It's how serendipitous." And she's a big fan of Crowley, and actually one of her famous Mardi Gras costumes was the sort of pyramid hat. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she didn't know about this essay. Of course, I sent it to her straight away. But yeah, it's very obscure, and it is strange that it doesn't have, I guess, more of a life here, because I do think it could, I mean, sort of like you said, a savvy business owner. At the old Absinthe house, I mean, I'd have, framed pictures of Crowley with a quote. You know what I mean? It's like, a little fact sheet you could give out to the customers saying history of the building, and because there's, it is quite it's a dense essay. It's certainly, if you're not a huge nerd, I could see how it might be kind of impenetrable or whatever, but there's some great quotes in there. I mean, there's some like really, really wonderful bits it is a shame that it isn't more well known, but hopefully, our little collaboration here will bring it to a wider audience.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, and I would tell people, if you're a fan of Esoterica, you're surely, Crowley, probably nothing about Absinthe. But I would say, and I think both of us agree that it hits different. The essay hits different.
Yes.
Get a couple glasses of Absinthe in you, like, keep pace with Aleister Crowley, and the essay really starts to shine.
Yeah, no, yeah. I literally did that the other day, just as a thought experiment. Wow.
It's science, you have to. Yeah, it's a what are they?
Science.
Participant observer. You have to really.
Precisely.
You can't maintain objectivity and no. But I would say
objectivity's for squares.
Yeah. But I would say, folks, if you've never read the essay, I'll have a link in the description, and go read it. Get you a glass of Absinthe, or 6. Read it through a few times, and also
devote 6 hours a day to the task.
That's what he says. Yeah, Crowley says, if you're not born an artist, you can make it happen. You just have to spend 6 hours a day in the old Absinthe house, getting lit on Absinthe, and you will become an artist. You'll become something. I'm not sure what you'll become, but Andy, it's speaking of drinking Absinthe. I'll say, folks, if you really love the Absinthe paraphernalia that you're seeing right here. Go check out Mason Absinthe. They sell all these wonderful fountains and carafes and absinthe glasses. All this stuff here has been loaned to us for Mason Absinthe. I have all my absinthe stuff back home, but I can't schlep an absinthe fountain with me to New Orleans. But they have great deals on these fountains and other absinthe accoutrements. So I would say, get yourself a glass of absinthe, get you a fountain, go read some Aleister Crowley, and enjoy the absolute wonderful trifecta of saint and sin that is Absinthe in New Orleans with the great beast 666.
Indeed.
And I think we're going to go to the quarter.
Yes, yeah. In fact, we are directly going to go to the quarter and drink more absinthe. So
So folks, come visit New Orleans. Give this place some love. Treat it with respect. It's a jewel in this country, and I'm so proud to be able to hang out here, and it's great to be able to hang out here, so close to the Witchfinder.
Yes, exactly. So close to the Witchfinder General. Yeah, exactly.
It'd be fun to film a conversation with him.
Yeah. We could make it happen.
We could do it.
Then thanks so much for coming, Justin, and cheers.
Absolutely,
cheers.
yeah.
To very happy meetings, and to Vice, to the Bohemia, to the French Quarter, and to Crowley.
Yeah.
Our great favorite power bottom. Cheers.
Absolutely.